He kissed me like I belonged to him, but the cruel joke was that I didn't. I was only pretending to be someone else, pretending to be his, pretending I wasn't falling apart every time he whispered my name. The mission had seemed simple enough on paper. Slip into his life. Protect him without him knowing the truth. Wear his husband's face and keep him safe until the danger passed. That was all. I was trained to lie, to disappear into identities, to become a ghost in plain sight. What I wasn't trained for was the way he'd look at me, the way his laughter filled the silence, or how his hand fit perfectly against mine like it had always been meant to. America was burning quietly in the background cities, humming with unrest, headlines bleeding stories of corruption and violence, but in that small Brooklyn apartment, it was just him and me. The world outside didn't matter. Only his heartbeat under my palm. Only the trust in his eyes when he leaned into me like I was the answer to every unspoken question. And yet I wasn't, because the truth was uglier than the disguise I wore. The man he loved was gone, swallowed by the kind of danger that left scars no one could see. And two was just the replacement, the counterfeit, the imposter who would eventually leave him with nothing but another goodbye. But God, if goodbyes were supposed to hurt, no one warned me they could feel like this. It started with silence. The kind of silence that wrapped around us when the lights dimmed and the world narrowed down to two people breathing the same air. I should have kept my distance. I should have remembered that every word I spoke, every smile I gave him, every brush of my hand against his was a lie. But distance had a way of collapsing when he leaned on me in the kitchen at midnight, sleepy and soft, mumbling about how safe he felt now. Safe. That word lodged in my chest like a blade. Because I knew the truth wasn't safe, not really. The threats were real, the shadows outside his door weren't imagination. And the only reason he could sleep at night was because I was here, wearing the face of the man he loved. "Why are you looking at me like that?" he asked one evening, tilting his head in that boyish way that always undid me. "Like what?" My voice was steady, trained. "Like I'm something you're about to lose." The laugh I forced out was hollow. "Maybe I just can't believe you're real." He smiled then, leaning closer, and my whole body betrayed me by leaning too. Our lips almost touched before he pulled back, shy and nervous, as if afraid he had imagined the tension between us. But I felt it. Every nerve in my body screamed it. I wanted to tell him everything in that moment, the mission, the lies, the reason I was here. I wanted to confess that his husband was gone and I was just the ghost haunting him with borrowed touches. But instead I kissed him, and he kissed me back. There's a strange cruelty in falling in love with someone you were never meant to have. A cruelty sharper than any weapon I'd been trained to face. Every morning when he brewed coffee and smiled at me like I was his whole world, I felt the weight of the lie tightening around my throat. Every evening when we sat shoulder to shoulder on the couch, his hand brushing against mine until it stayed there, warm and steady, I forgot for a heartbeat who I was supposed to be. He believed I was his, and I let him, because the mission demanded it, because his life depended on it, because I was too weak to walk away from the one thing I'd never been allowed to want. The danger outside grew louder. Unseen men trailing him in the streets. Phone calls in the middle of the night with no one on the other end. A shadow in the window that vanished too quickly to be a trick of the light. And through it all, I stayed by his side, pretending to be his husband, pretending to love him when the truth was, the pretending had stopped a long time ago. The first time he said he loved me, it broke me. It was late. Rain hammered against the glass, drowning the city in its relentless rhythm. He stood in the doorway of the bedroom, watching me with that same quiet intensity he always had, and he whispered it like a secret. "I love you." 2 words. So simple, so devastating. I wanted to say it back. I wanted to give him the truth that I loved him, that I had loved him from the moment he trusted me with his laughter, with his quiet fears, with the softness he didn't show the world. But what came out instead was silence, because anything else would have been unforgivable. He walked over, pressed his forehead to mine, and said it again, softer. "I love you," and I kissed him like I believed I had the right. The mission was ending. I knew it. The threats were closing in. The men who wanted him silenced weren't going to wait much longer, and soon my orders would come. Orders that would rip me out of his life as abruptly as I had entered it. He would wake up one morning and I'd be gone. Just another ghost. But he deserved the truth. And that truth would destroy him. That night, as he slept with his head resting on my chest, his hand tangled in mine, I whispered the words he'd never hear. I love you too, because sometimes love isn't about staying. Sometimes it's about walking away before your presence becomes another wound. And yet, when his fingers tightened around mine in his sleep, holding on even in dreams, I wondered if I had the strength to let go. He didn't know. That was the cruelest part of it all. Didn't know. Every smile he gave me, every word of affection, every soft brush of his lips was built on a lie, and I had woven it so tightly around him that he couldn't see the threads. That was my job. To protect him without letting him realize the world was crumbling just beyond his door. But I was failing because the more I stayed, the more I wanted to make this lie real. The storm outside hadn't stopped all night. Lightning slashed across the sky, illuminating the Brooklyn skyline through the thin curtains. He stirred against me, his chestnut hair damp with sweat from dreams he wouldn't tell me about. He trusted me enough to fall asleep in my arms, but not enough to admit what haunted him. And I couldn't blame him. How could he know I wasn't the man he thought I was? I slipped out of bed quietly, the floorboards creaking under my weight. My reflection in the bathroom mirror was a stranger. Same dark eyes, same sharp lines of a face I'd memorized from files and photographs. Same small scar along the jaw that wasn't mine but his husband's. I touched it absent-mindedly, the prosthetic smooth beneath my fingers. This wasn't me. It was him. And yet, when he whispered my name in his sleep, it felt like it belonged to me. The morning sun broke through with an unwelcome warmth, and with it, reality pressed harder on my shoulders. He woke up first, padding barefoot into the kitchen, hair sticking up in every direction. He looked so effortlessly human, yawning, scratching at his neck, mumbling something about coffee that it nearly broke me. "Morning," he said, his voice still rough from sleep. "Morning." I tried to sound casual, but my throat was tight. He poured coffee into 2 mismatched mugs, sliding one toward me across the counter. "You look like you didn't sleep." I smirked faintly. "Neither did you." He leaned against the counter, eyes narrowing slightly. "Bad dreams again?" I didn't answer. He didn't push. That was one of the things I both loved and hated about him, knew when to let silence fill the space instead of forcing words. "Do you ever feel like—" He hesitated, swirling his coffee absent-mindedly. "Like you're living in someone else's story?" The question hit me harder than it should have. I forced a steady breath. All the time, his eyes met mine, lingering a second too long, like he was waiting for me to explain. I didn't. Instead, I sipped the coffee, burning my tongue just to feel something real. The threats weren't slowing down. If anything, they were circling closer. I knew the men behind it all, faces I'd studied in dossiers, names whispered in shadowed halls. They wanted him silenced. They wanted his husband silenced. And since his husband was already gone, they'd settle for him. He didn't know how much danger he was in. He didn't see the car parked too long across the street, the unfamiliar faces lingering at the corner store, the letters slipped under the door with no return address. But I saw it all, and I hated myself for being the barrier between him and the truth. One evening, as I checked the locks for the 3rd time, he came up behind me, wrapping his arms loosely around my waist. His chin rested on my shoulder, warm and grounding. "You're jumpy lately," he murmured. I froze for a second before forcing a chuckle. "Just tired." "Liar." His voice was soft, not accusing but knowing. "You're always scanning the windows, the street, even me sometimes, like you're waiting for something." I turned in his arms, my hands finding his shoulders automatically. "Maybe I'm just waiting for you to tell me what's really going on in your head." He looked at me, startled, before lowering his gaze. "I keep thinking about him." My chest tightened painfully. "My husband," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes I feel like I'm losing him, even when you're standing right in front of me." It was the first time he had admitted it aloud. The first time he'd acknowledged the strange, unspoken shift between us. And I had no words, only guilt. So I did the one thing I wasn't supposed to, kissed him. Not the careful, calculated kisses I'd used before to keep the illusion alive, but a desperate, raw kiss that poured every forbidden truth I carried into him. He kissed me back with the same desperation. When we broke apart, breathless, he searched my face like he was trying to find the man he remembered. And maybe for that moment he did. That night, I sat awake long after he'd fallen asleep again, listening to the rain against the glass. My orders would come soon, I could feel it. The mission was almost complete, but the thought of leaving him now, after everything, was unbearable. I wasn't supposed to care. I wasn't supposed to love him. But love had a way of ignoring rules, breaking through training, burning down every wall I'd built. And when his hand reached for mine in his sleep again, holding on like he was afraid I'd vanish, I knew that when the time came, goodbye wouldn't just hurt, it would destroy me. The next day, the world shifted. Started with a phone call, an untraceable number, a single sentence. "They know." The line went dead before I could answer. My pulse hammered in my ears as I scanned the street outside. The same car from before was gone, but something told me the danger wasn't. He walked into the room, holding a book in one hand, looking at me with mild curiosity. "Who was that?" "No one," I said too quickly. He tilted his head, suspicious. "You sure?" "Yeah." I forced a smile. "Wrong number." He studied me for a long moment before nodding slowly. But I saw the doubt in his eyes. And I knew sooner or later the truth would bleed through. That evening, we sat on the fire escape, watching the city glow beneath us. He leaned against me, his warmth seeping through the thin fabric of my shirt. For a while, it felt almost normal, two people sharing a quiet moment in the chaos of New York. "Do you ever think about leaving?" he asked suddenly. "Leaving what?" "This city, this life, just starting over somewhere no one knows us." His voice was wistful, almost childlike in its hope. I swallowed hard. "All the time." He turned to me, eyes shining faintly in the city lights. "Then why don't we?" I didn't answer, couldn't answer, because the truth was, I wanted that more than anything. But the mission wasn't over, and I wasn't his. Not really. So I just pulled him closer, kissed his hair, and whispered the only lie that felt like the truth. "Someday." The knock on the door was too sharp to be friendly. 3 quick raps, a pause, and then 2 more. My body froze before instinct kicked in. I pressed a finger to my lips, urging him into silence. His brows furrowed, confusion darkening his features, but he obeyed. I grabbed the gun hidden under the couch cushions. My training flooded back, steadying my breath, sharpening my focus. The pattern of the knock, it wasn't random. It was a signal. "Who is it?" he whispered. "Stay quiet." The knock came again, louder this time, rattling the wood. I could see the shift in him, the man who had trusted me so easily now looking at me with dawning suspicion. His chestnut eyes weren't just afraid. They were searching for the truth I had spent weeks burying. The doorframe shuddered under a sudden kick. His gasp broke the silence, and before he could speak, I grabbed his wrist and pulled him toward the bedroom. "What's happening?" he demanded, his voice low but trembling. I shoved him gently inside, locking the door behind us. "Stay here." "No." He grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "You can't just, what the hell is going on? And why do you have a gun?" For a second, I almost told him everything. The truth pressed against my teeth, begging to be freed. But another crash at the front door forced my decision. "Please," I whispered, softer than I'd intended. "Trust me." His eyes widened at the raw edge of desperation in my voice. Slowly, reluctantly, he released my arm. I stepped back into the hallway just as the front door splintered open. They came in fast, 2 men in dark coats, their movements precise, professional. Not ordinary thugs. These were hunters. "Where is he?" one barked. I didn't answer. My finger tightened on the trigger. The first lunged forward, and the silence of the apartment shattered. Gunfire erupted, deafening, acrid smoke burning my nose. I dropped the first man with a shot to the leg, the other ducking behind the counter. "Wrong house," I growled, though we all knew it was a lie. The second man fired back. Glass shattered, books toppled from the shelves. I pressed against the wall, calculating angles, waiting for a break. Behind the locked door, I heard him cry out. His voice ripped through me like a blade. He didn't understand. He couldn't. And I was about to make sure he hated me for the rest of his life because hate would be safer than love. With a swift move, I fired twice, forcing the second man to retreat. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Neighbors had heard, called it in. Time was short. I turned, breathing hard, and found him standing in the hallway. The locked door hung open, his hands trembling at his sides. "You're not him," he whispered. The words froze me. His gaze traveled from the gun in my hand to the blood on my shirt, then up to my face. "You're not my husband. Who are you?" The world tilted. My chest ached with every breath. He deserved the truth, but giving it to him would destroy everything. "I'm the one keeping you alive," I said hoarsely. Tears glistened in his eyes, though he blinked them back stubbornly. "So you've been lying to me this whole time." The sirens grew louder, flashing red and blue bleeding through the windows. We didn't have time, but standing there, watching the hurt spread across his face, I wanted to stop the world. "I never wanted to hurt you," I managed. "Then why does it feel like you just did?" His voice cracked, and that broke me more than any bullet ever could. The police stormed the building minutes later. I slipped us out the fire escape, guiding him through the rain-slick alleys until the flashing lights faded behind us. He didn't speak, didn't look at me. His silence was worse than his accusations. We ended up in a dingy motel off the interstate, the kind of place no one asked questions. He sat on the bed, his arms crossed tightly over his chest, while I checked the blinds for tails. Finally he spoke, his voice raw. "Tell me the truth. All of it. Right now." I leaned against the dresser, suddenly feeling every ounce of the weight I carried. "Your husband." My throat closed, the words refusing to come. "He's gone." The sharp inhale he made nearly shattered me. His hands gripped the blanket, knuckles white. "No, I'm sorry. You're lying again." His eyes were wild, desperate. "He can't be gone. He called me last month. That wasn't him." His world broke in front of me. I could see it piece by piece, collapsing behind his eyes. "You bastard." The words came out low, venomous. "You wore his face. You touched me. His voice cracked, fury giving way to devastation. "How could you?" I wanted to beg, to tell him it wasn't just the mission anymore. That somewhere between the lies and the danger, what I felt had become the only truth left in me. But I couldn't, because the truth wouldn't save him. Only distance would. So I stood there, silent, and let him hate me. That night, I slept on the floor while he cried himself to sleep in the bed. The sound was worse than any wound I'd ever taken. I wanted to reach out, to hold him, to promise him he wasn't alone. But I had no right. The mission had stripped me of that. Still, when the dawn came and I saw him curled against the pillow, his tear-streaked face soft in the pale light, I knew I couldn't leave him yet. Not until I was sure the danger was gone. Even if staying meant losing him forever. The following days blurred into a tense rhythm of running and hiding. Safe houses, abandoned cabins, restless nights filled with silence that screamed louder than words. He kept his distance, but his eyes betrayed him confusion, hurt, and something else he tried to bury. I caught him watching me once, late at night when he thought I was asleep. His gaze lingered not with hatred, but with the same fragile longing I carried for him. When our eyes met, he turned away quickly, pretending to adjust the blanket. We were both drowning, but neither of us reached for the other. Not yet. The breaking point came a week later. We had holed up in a cabin upstate, surrounded by pines and silence. I thought we'd shaken the hunters. I was wrong. The crack of a rifle shattered the stillness, splintering the window inches from his head. He screamed, ducking instinctively. I grabbed him, pulling him to the floor as another shot rang out. They found us, I hissed, dragging him toward the back door. Adrenaline surged, every sense heightened. Shadows moved between the trees. At least 3 of them. Too many. We burst into the woods, branches clawing at our clothes, breath ragged in the cold night air. He stumbled, but I caught him, my arm locking around his waist as I half-carried him forward. Don't stop, I urged. Gunfire followed us, echoing like thunder through the forest. He clung to me, his face buried against my shoulder, his body shaking with terror. And all I could think was how much I loved him, how much I would give to keep him safe, even if it meant never hearing him say he loved me again. The forest was no longer quiet. Gunfire had ceased, but the echoes of violence clung to the trees like ghosts. The air smelled of smoke and iron, a cruel reminder of what we had just endured. He was shaking in my arms, his breath ragged against my chest, but alive. Alive. That was all that mattered. I lowered him gently onto the mossy ground, checking for wounds. A graze along his arm, a cut on his cheek, nothing life-threatening. Relief hit me so hard it almost brought me to my knees. "You're okay?" I whispered, my voice cracking under the weight of everything I couldn't say. His eyes opened slowly, pain and fear swirling in their depths, but also something sharper, something searching. "Why?" he rasped. "Why are you doing this for me? You could have left. You should have left. Because I love you." The words nearly slipped out, but I bit them back, swallowing the confession like poison. He hated me for the lies, for wearing the face of the man he'd lost. But even hate couldn't erase the way his hand clutched mine now, desperate and trembling. "I promised myself I'd protect you," I said instead. He laughed bitterly, though tears welled in his eyes. "You promised me nothing. You're not him." The truth between us hung heavy in the night air, undeniable. I couldn't run from it anymore, not after everything, not after watching him nearly die in my arms. "I'm not," I admitted, my voice breaking. "I was sent to be him, to wear his face, to keep you alive until the people who wanted him gone stopped hunting you. But I wasn't supposed to." My chest tightened painfully. "I wasn't supposed to fall for you." His breath caught. For a long moment, neither of us spoke, the weight of those words settling like ash around us. Finally, he whispered, "Then who are you?" The question tore something open inside me. "I'm no one," I said, shaking my head. "A ghost they trained to be whoever they needed. I don't even know who I am anymore. But when I'm with you," I hesitated, my hand trembling as it brushed his cheek. "When I'm with you, I feel real." Tears slipped down his face. He didn't pull away from my touch. Instead, he leaned into it, fragile but unyielding. "Damn you," he murmured, voice choked. "Damn you for making me want to believe you." The final confrontation came at dawn. The leader of the men who had hunted us stepped into the clearing, gun drawn, eyes cold. He had been chasing us for weeks, orchestrating every shadow, every whispered threat. And now he stood between us and any chance at peace. "You should have stayed out of this," he sneered at me. "He was never meant to survive." I pulled him behind me, my body a shield. "He's not yours to take." The man smirked, raising his gun. "And you think you can stop me? You're just a disposable copy." Maybe he was right. Maybe I was nothing more than a counterfeit. But the warmth of the hand clutching the back of my shirt told me I wasn't disposable not to him. I raised my gun, steady despite the storm inside me. "Then let's see which ghost is stronger." The world narrowed to a single breath. The crack of gunfire split the air, sharp and final. When the smoke cleared, the man lay crumpled in the dirt. My own body swayed with exhaustion, but I was still standing, still alive, still here. And so was he. We stumbled back to the cabin together, though it was half-burned and broken. The sky was bleeding pink and gold as the sun crept over the horizon. The danger was over. For the first time in months, the silence wasn't threatening, it was healing. Inside, He sat on what was left of the bed, staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. Not anger, not hate. Something gentler, though just as sharp. "You lied to me," he said quietly. "I did. You're not him. I'm not." He swallowed, his chest rising and falling unevenly. "But you stayed. You didn't have to, but you stayed." I stepped closer, my voice raw. "Because walking away from you was the one mission I could never complete." His eyes shone with unshed tears. "I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't expect you to," I whispered. "But I need you to know." Every word I said, every kiss, every moment I wasn't pretending anymore. The silence stretched. Then, slowly he reached out, his fingers brushing mine. I froze, afraid to move, until his hand tightened around mine with quiet certainty. "You hurt me," he said, voice trembling. "But losing you would hurt worse." My chest shattered, rebuilt itself, and shattered again in the span of a heartbeat. Carefully, almost reverently, I cupped his face in my hands. Our foreheads touched, breaths mingling, tears slipping freely now. "No more lies," he whispered. "No more lies," I promised. And when his lips met mine, it wasn't desperation anymore. It wasn't a cover or a mission or a mistake. It was real. For the first time, it was real. We left the ruins of the cabin behind that morning, hand in hand. The world was still dangerous, still cruel, still waiting to test us. But as the highway stretched before us, endless and uncertain, I felt something I hadn't in years. Hope. Because sometimes love isn't about who you were supposed to be. Sometimes it's about who you choose to become when someone finally sees you not as a ghost, not as a replacement, but as the person you are when you let yourself be loved. And for me, that person was his. Forever. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.